Croeso, welcome to Tales for Wales, the podcast that never fails to declare war on sobriety, to declare war on non-history related podcasts, and to declare my love for you, Jackie Noby,
wow,
diamond in the muff.
I don't believe it. After all these episodes, you finally come out with it.
And I said diamond in the muff, and he didn't quite react the way I thought he would.
I did. I completely missed that.
Like,
diamond in the muff. Sorry, that deserved a bit more of a chuckle than I gave it.
Thank you. It was actually, I've worked really hard on that. I really
diamond in the muff, underline on the muff.
It took me all of, I'd say, less than 15 seconds to write all that, and I don't think
that's just how quick you are, though, mate. Isn't it? That's just how your mind operates. No,
how are you then, you little pig?
I'm good, mate. I was going to ask how you are.
Well,
you seem in good spirits because. You seem in good spirits. I thought you were going to be a little grumpus tonight because you've been mentioning how tired you are, mate, and how you've been the sickest man ever.
Do you know, so today, it's really funny you say that, actually, because I was going to say to you, I've been properly, under the weather. Em's been unwell as well, but I've been, fucking so zonked. It's because I meant to get these jabs every 3 months to, fill me with energy. I get, these B12 injections, and they just stopped me being...
What actually are they? I don't know. B12, I'm assuming it's a fucking good thing.
It means I don't make enough red blood cells, and so it makes me a bit anemic, and it means I can have really low energy, which is mad because I'm quite a high energy person.
But the old yin and yang within your own body.
I get absolutely zonko Billy Bonko and get so tired. I'm just fucking exhausted. And because of the move and stuff, I just never bothered getting a new doctor. I never bothered. So it's been 5 months without having them.
You went, I've been fine, so I obviously don't need them anymore.
I noticed about a month ago, I was like, fucking hell, I'm slog heavy.
Fucking hell.
So I finally got hold of the doctors, and then they were like, come, because it's a long-term thing, you can't just have it, you got to come for a little conversation. So I went up there today, and there was no conversation.
I've got to give you a bloody B13 jab.
She gave me a B12, and I instantly feel because this morning I was going to text you. I was like, Kaz, you know what, mate? I might fucking bail on tonight. Can we do another Patreon? Because I just can't be arsed. I was like, busy week in work and just a bit tired. And I was just so not keen. And literally, I had the jab, and I'd say by the time I got back home, I was like, fuck you, let's have it.
You're like fucking Popeye with his spinach.
So I genuinely feel, I don't think it could work that fast, but I just feel so much better. I feel pumped.
I mean, whether it's a placebo thing of getting the injection straight in or not, who cares if it works?
Yeah,
it works,
so I do feel in much finer fettle than if this was last night. I'd have been the most depressed podcast ever. And do you know what actually did put me up? Put me up quite a bit. Yeah. I wrote my notes. I wrote my notes about 3 weeks ago. I finished my notes about 3 weeks ago, but I tidied them up lunchtime today to get them ready for tonight. And I was pumped reading it. I thought, oh man, do you know, because we've had guests on quite a lot in a row recently, and we've done some not so serious episodes. I don't think we've recorded an actual episode.
No, not just me and you, and not a Patreon or something like that. Yeah, for a while.
And I was reading it, I thought, fuck, I love Welsh history. And I was like, because I think we even though the listener won't have noticed because we plan things in advance, but we actually haven't recorded an actual history episode in probably about a month and a bit, maybe.
Yeah, it's been a while.
When you get back into it, and I was reading all my references and my books and stuff, I was like, do you know what? I fucking love this country.
that's our crack.
It's really fun.
Welsh history,
and I
just
got pumped. I thought,
line a bit of Glyndŵr up, then stack me up another one of fucking Welling, please.
And I just got really. I was enjoying. I was like, oh, do you know what? It's really fun. I get to go on to my old bloody mate, have a few laughs and talk about Welsh history.
Dare I ask, are you having a sesh, or is it the soft drinks? You're still sticking to the soft drinks?
I stuck to a soft drink, and then I couldn't help myself.
Oh, but some things just found its way into the office.
And I bought six non-alkies. I got the Heineken Zero. It's currently in the freezer. So I'll have one thing of rum and then the rest non-alkies because
I love it. I love the change. You said to me there was a caveat in a text you had at the start of this week when you were saying like, I'm just so fucking knackered, blah blah blah, need my B12s, whatever. And there was a little caveat at the end. You went, but it could all change by the time we.
Because that was like on Monday, and I had a really big Friday,
and it always does. That's what I love about it.
I'm still probably not going to booze this weekend, even though it's bank holiday, because I'm like, I'm doing pretty good. Like I'm like doing really well at the gym. Like I'm actually kind of on track for doing quite well. So I don't want to get just fucked for next week as well. But we also
is this you opting out of the self-sabotage club? Because I'm still very much in it
right now. What tonight?
No, it's in like you're doing really well. Why sabotage it with like a fucking massive night?
Yeah, so
I'm still gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. I know no other way. And
also, I'm fucking beyond destitute. I'm broke at the moment, man.
Mate, I don't know what it is about this month. I think everyone I speak to is fucking being bled dry.
I am absolutely and next Thursday we are doing the Glyndŵr 5-parter, and that's going to be 5 times. That's going to be big. And I am genuinely trying to have one big drink a month instead of every week. So like. That's my new thing, and like it's working quite well. Like I just find myself like actually going gym 4 times a week or more, you know, like more than I was going before. And just doing like a little bit. I think because being hungover is so fucking hard. It's such hard work.
It sucks, and it scuppers any other positive thing you had planned.
Even if you do go to the gym, you do a half-hearted one, it's shit.
Yeah,
like if I had like nice plans to cook meal, it's not as fun because I'm fucking sweating like a big pig,
sick to death of it.
Yeah. So I'm just having a week. I'm having like once a month a biggie, and then obviously like tonight, you know, a drink here and there. But what's that amongst friends? You know, come on.
Yeah, what's that between a couple of podcast co-hosts? And
what about you?
No one cares.
What about you, man? It's probably we should probably promote that. I don't know really how we promote it, but like, don't we get like 7 days off, a week free trial with a Patreon at the moment? Did we figure that out?
Is it? I'll be honest. We had every intention of doing it last weekend, and I just didn't get around to it. And then I was like, all right,
it's not 7 day free trial. You nearly got a 7 day free trial, but you don't know.
You probably can have it. I just don't know exactly how it works. I don't want to say now you get a 7 day free trial. I think if it just gives it to you, it's like, it doesn't work. It
gives it you. So anyway, check it out, and you might get 7 days.
How's this? Yeah, why didn't you have a little peek at the Patreon come Sunday, right?
Tales for Wales, and do it via the website or Android. Don't do it via Apple because you will get fleeced.
Don't do it through the Apple app because you'll get fucked. But do it through there, right? And you might have a cheeky little 7 day free trial of our plus tiers.
Apple take 25%, and that doesn't. You have to pay more.
No, we will send someone around to fuck you if you do it through Apple.
You would just pay like an extra, more expensive than you have to pay if you do it via Android or via the website.
Yeah,
you can then get the app.
Patreon will fucking rinse you out of it. So don't do it on Apple.
You can, just to explain, you can also then get the app once you've signed up. It just don't pay via the app. So let me say it one more time so it's clearer. If you were on an Apple phone, go to patreon.com/Tales for Wales, the website, sign up there, then download the app, and then it's better.
It's cheaper. It's cheaper. It'll cost you more if you do it on the Apple app because they have all these fees and shit
Tim
like that.
Cook has got a fucking...
It's a rinser.
He's an absolute little user. He's a bastard user.
He's a goddamn user.
Anyway, how are you little bastard?
Not bad, mate. I was going to say this is a pretty long one, but I got one short story. I got two. I got two to pick from. Right,
Jack.
One
short
for this
stories.
one for the next one.
Well, should we do a Patreon shout out beforehand?
Let's do that. Let's do the Patreon first.
Here we go. On here. Let's have a little booches. Well, the list is long now. Is this Jen? We got some. We did Steve Vaughan, and we done Sean Hughes.
It's
Jen Lynn.
It's Jen Lynn is the next in line.
Were you going to say I was only 50?
Jen Lynn.
Jen Lynn. Jen Lynn. Jen Lynn.
Jen Lynn.
Please don't touch my tits because I'm Jen Lynn.
Please don't cancel your Patreon after this.
Oh, yeah. Also, Jen Lynn.
What else have
double N. Jen spells her name. Although...
Leave some N's for the rest of us, Jen.
Just put an M there. It basically looks like an M. Jem Lim. I'm going out on a limb here, Jen Lynn. I'm going to say maybe Jen is actually like Swedish. She's like Jen Lynn.
Yeah,
well, absolutely. We need when it comes to Jen Lynn's episodes. we'll need to know where they're from, because
I thought you were going to say we're going to need to do better than that.
Oh, that's beautiful. We serenaded Jen
I thought it was
Lynn.
pretty good.
Yeah.
We had two a little duet there, a doyard, as they say in Welsh.
J Lo? Is she someone?
J Lo is a person.
Well,
yes, that's Jennifer Lopez.
J Hi.
You want to say J Ho?
Jen Lynn's new name is now J Ho.
Jen Lynn, you are the reason that I breathe.
Jack's doing some mildly offensive Indian dance moves as well.
That is from the music video.
Oh, fair enough.
If Nicole Shirt Swinger can do it, I can. And yes, I did say Shirt Swinger purposefully there. I didn't mispronounce her name.
I didn't even hear that the first time round. Jen Lynn! That's an absolute banger of a song. Well, cheers, Jen Lynn. Absolute legend.
On the original OST for Slumdog Millionaire. Jen Lynn!
I've never seen Slumdog. Seems boring.
No, I think I watched half of it and I kind of found it boring.
We should do that as an episode when that Welsh guy cheated on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. You know, Sergeant coughs a lot.
I saw, when that happened, I remember seeing on the news that Hugh Grant had been pegged to play him in a film, and it was going to be called Coughs and Robbers.
Also, don't say Hugh Grant's been pegged, because I instantly thought he was getting absolutely rogered.
100% he's paid a prostitute to peg him at some point. That's why he was so angry when the Paps had it. He's throwing fucking tin beans at him.
Sorry, I don't mean to announce this, but I've been pegged online.
I've sort of had a little thing of my arse.
I've been suddenly pegged. I was quite embarrassed about it, actually. Bloody hell. That was an awful Hugh Grant impression.
Best we can do.
And would you like to do your little story, or do you want to go straight into the episode?
Well, I got pick from two of these, right? So I've got I'll tell you how I've labelled them in my notes.
Sorry,
okay?
One more thing, because I just quickly checked my note, and that's what I wanted to do. Really got to push the Patreon episode that came out on the weekend. I was meant to have a little voice clip at the start to push people to the Patreon, because we put a video up there. I play this electric shock quiz. It's about half hour long. It's genuinely funny. It's like one of the funniest things I think we've ever done. It's like
I worry we've actually peaked too early.
Yeah, I know.
The rest of our content's going to be shit.
Because me and Jack are we've got like a good camera setup, like a really good camera, good audio, and so like it's now just down to the content. And we've got another. So we're going to try and do
the one thing we're in charge of.
We're going to try and do like a good feature like every 6 weeks. So there'll be something like hopefully every other month on the Patreon of like a high quality video. The first one we've done is this electric shock quiz, which was fucking painful. Like genuinely,
I could not believe that they sold these. Anyone can buy this. I know. Shit. I had
to buy it.
Like, they don't sell it under regulation.
They don't sell it anymore, so I had to buy it off someone else who had it from a child. So like I went on eBay and found it.
That makes more sense. Black market.
Yeah, I had to get on a resale market. But it was we did like a Welsh history quiz, and it's genuinely like
I'm not surprised you had to do that, because the power in those things. I was expecting it. We even said before, didn't we? And this is a glimpse behind the curtain for the listeners now. We were like, look, maybe we have to play this up.
Because it's like a kid's toy. We're like, how painful is this going to be?
Kid's toy. If you watch the video, there's not an unreal reaction in that. Like you can see it on our faces. Like it goes through your fucking hands.
It says don't use it if you're pregnant, if you've got heart issues, and it says like over 16s only. And like when I was like a fucking 8-year-old, I remember being scared of the one. I had the little thumb one. This one was the next level.
Yeah, I had a thumb one.
Yeah. Anyway,
it was surprising.
It's even if you just sign up for 1 month and watch that, I really would recommend it. It's genuinely funny.
Take a look this Sunday. You might get a little freebie.
Yeah,
and can have a look at it. Think of it that way.
Is that how you? That new sign up thing? The thing we don't know exists.
Yeah, if you got if you got the 7, we'll suss it out. Have a look on Sunday.
We can't do everything for you guys. Okay, comes a point.
Have a look.
You have to.
There'll be a 7-day free trial or something like that, and then you can watch what you want. So if you got nothing to do for the next 7 days after you sign up,
repeat.
Blitz the whole back catalog. Just do it.
Yeah. All right. Admin done. Banter engaged.
Right, done. Engage. Right. I got two stories for you. These are the titles they've been given in my notes. Okay. Sheep Detectives or Cum Drinking Barry.
You cut out a little bit there when you said that.
Did I?
But did you say cum drinking?
Yes, I did.
I hate that.
I know you absolutely wince at that.
I hate that. So I'm going to go Sheep Detective, and you can save that for another episode. I fucking
It'll be the one after this. So you set yourself up next one. So I just want to say a quick, like, mini spoiler-free review for the Sheep Detectives film that came out with Hugh Jackman. Yeah, we went to see it. Me and Amy went to see it on our date night the other night. I was a little hungover, shock, and that would have been fine, right? I don't mind a hungover cinema at all.
It's quite nice actually.
But I sat down. First of all, it's a PG, right? So I was like, oh, it's gonna be full of kids. It was full of kids and old people. So many old people, and we were in the mid. We were like bang in the middle, right? So like halfway up, halfway in.
Yeah. Prime seats normally.
Prime seats, absolute prime seats all day. But don't you realise,
when you see a kids' film, the atmosphere is so different to me and you, cinephiles, who love, like, genuinely... If anyone makes
someone appreciates the medium a little bit.
If someone makes a single sound, I tell them off at the cinema. Whereas,
so many yuppie little
I watched
things.
Zootopia 2, Zootropolis 2, and there was, like, it was insane. There was people just, like...
Did you hate it?
It was insane how people... It was quite fun, because I was like, oh, this is quite a fun experience. But a bunch of teenagers, like, probably 10 teenagers, brought duvets in with them. And they were all under duvet. And I was actually thought, well, that's kind of fun. And then all these kids were screaming.
I'll take them out, though, afterwards.
Yeah, I know. But they were just probably going home. I don't know. I didn't follow them. I just didn't check it. I said, he's on with you. Anyway, sorry, interjecting.
Well, basically, we were sat there, right, and it was okay. It was fairly free, our row. And then these two old biddies came and sat down right next to me.
Bastards.
And it was like, we had the rest of the row. Yeah. And it's like, okay, maybe you didn't pick that seat. But read the fucking room and listen and smell my aura, right? This is a man who wants to be near you. Anyway, it started feeling like way too much. I said to Amy, let's ditch these seats. Let's go to the old premiums on the side there that are empty, right? After the lights have gone down. Amy was so nervous that we were like committing fraud. I was like, it's fine. No, I said, what's the worst that's going to happen? They'll go, can you move back to your seats, please? And we go, okay.
I mean, that would kill me, the embarrassment.
Yeah. I think you and Amy are very similar. She was like, I could not go home with that shame above my head. Anyway, we moved. It was fine then. It wasn't surrounded and like sort of clocks closed in. Anyway, Sheep Detectives, highly enjoyed it.
Really?
Thoroughly enjoyed it. 4-star film, mate, for me. 4 out of 5. That's high praise. Yeah. Very high praise. Very good. I did think, it's going to be some stupid little kiddie film, but I don't think it's. It shouldn't be a PG. Actually,
it always sounds like you're going to say fiddler after
it's
it.
It's got fiddler at the afterwards. Yeah,
I always hate it. And you've always said kiddie. You've always been a kiddie lad, and I've always hated
a kiddie film. Yeah, I'm still in the innocent age where you could say that without like following fiddler. Yeah, yeah. But it's a good kids film.
Thank you.
No, sorry, not a good kids film. I say it's very death and very like there's lots of like symbolism around death and like what's the word, like meditations on like death and life and all this sort of stuff. It's very deep for a kids film. It's also got Greg from Succession in it, doing possibly the worst British accent going. But if you can get past that, he has got some very funny bits in it, actually. And like I did find myself, I don't know if it was just a bit hungover. I was like, like just chuckling to myself, and I almost cried at 2 points. So it does
sound like the hangover's playing a little role in this.
Maybe
but that's
a little
fine
bit,
as well, because we're often hungover.
Yeah, exactly. And also, if something can make me almost cry in a hangover, it'll definitely pull the heartstrings when sober as well. So. But yeah, highly recommend Sheep Detectives. And also, fucking Hugh Jackman in it. He hasn't skipped a beat. He's hench as hell. He's lush. And also, he's meant to be a sheep farmer. And you're like, what do you do in your spare time, mate?
Well, sometimes sheep farmers, like, they are rip sheep farmers, though.
I know farmers are usually like big boys, but this guy's like, he's Wolverine.
I like that Russell Crowe just got really fat and never bothered to keep it. Like Russell Crowe. Because remember how ripped he was in Gladiator?
Yeah. He did his bit in Gladiator. He was like, never again.
Well, fuck that. Because he's like a massive Aussie bloke as well, isn't he, Russell Crowe? Because it says Hugh Jackman, they're both Aussies, aren't they?
I remember, I didn't see the film, but it was one like where he was a crazed driver on the motorway in America. I remember seeing the trailer and going, my God, what a fat fuck.
People thought it was a fat suit. They thought he was wearing a fat suit, but he just laterally
imagine the thing. I guess he doesn't care about it, but like my ego would be like, oh, I was a new movie doing it. They all think you're in a fat suit, Jack. It's like, oh, it's just me.
Not Jack Russell or Russell Crowe.
I was just saying as if I was Russell Crowe. Yeah, I was in the moment. I was in the hypothetical. Sorry.
Anyway, get to your big story. Come on. big crescendo. We're 20.
That was it. It was a good thing.
That's
it
your
was a good
story.
Film. It was a mini route. Yeah. The other one's a bit more of a story. I just wanted to.
You need to have a real think to yourself soon. What is an anecdote and how do I get to them? Because
okay, I said 2 stories. What I should have said was one's a movie.
I've seen a
tiny movie review, and one is a story.
Right,
and you didn't want
from one.
You didn't want my cum story, so we didn't want to give you that.
From one boring non-story to quite an interesting one, actually.
Thank you.
This is the Clare family part 2. We had the first one a couple of weeks ago, and the Clares, as we know, bit of a bastards in Wales, very prominent, really important for our history. And important doesn't mean good or bad, but they are important.
From English perspective, very important family. From the Welsh perspective, like you said, very important bastards, I'd say. Yes. So yes, like Frank says, we're back today with part 2 of the House of Clare, where we explore the generations of lords that had consistent beef with Wales throughout the ages. If you haven't listened to part 1, I urge you go back, chuck that on. You'll get to know how the Clares got their names, where it came from, all the shenanigans and bastardry that they got up to before the 1100s. For those already clued up, you'll know we left the last part with a de Clare cousin, a Richard de Clare, who also went by the nickname Strongbow. He used Wales as a staging point to invade Ireland. So while Strongbow was more of an interesting offshoot, today I'm going to go back to the main line of Clares. I'm going to pick up with the son of Roger de Clare, and he's yet another Richard. Anyone who's listened to the last episode will know they're all bloody Richards or Gilberts, essentially. The occasional, Gil, won't you let it be a marshland, old Gil?
I really need this time,
I'm just a martial lord. Come on, Henry. So this one is Richard de Clare. He was the 3rd Earl of Hertford, who also bore the titles of 6th Lord of Tonbridge, 5th Lord of Cardigan. Richard was born in 1153, and he took up the titles and lands of his father Roger in 1173 at the age of 20. There wasn't a lot in the way of Welsh connections to this particular Richard, but he was present for the coronations of both King Richard I in 1189 and King John in 1199. He also had a part to play during the events leading up to the signing of the Magna Carta in 1215. He sided with the barons against King John and had his castle at Tonbridge taken as punishment. He then played a leading part in the Magna Carta negotiations, so part of a pretty massive...
He'd have been friends with Llywelyn Fawr then.
He probably would have been, or at least on the same side of the the barons.
Although probably not his friend, because during the...
Not friends, probably hated each other quite a bit, but
but Llywelyn was part of the Magna Carta.
Probably an alliance of opportunity, I think they call that, isn't it? For those who don't know, the Magna Carta was a massive deal back when it was signed. It's a lot more complicated than what I'm about to say, but the bare bones of it was a peace treaty between King John and the rebellious barons, because John was a pretty tyrannical king. And the document basically says that any free person had the right to justice and a fair trial of their peers, and that governing officials and even the king were not above the law. The only real thing of note I found was that under this Richard is when the Clares started using their coat of arms, which is pretty cool.
Oh, nice.
Some of you probably see this in the last episode's album art. It'll probably be the same one for this one as well. So Richard, he had a son, another bloody Gilbert, of course, or Gil, in 1180. This was in 1180. And when he passed away in 1217, Gilbert became Gilbert de Clare, 7th Lord of Clare, 4th Earl of Hertford. He also inherited the estate of Gloucester from his mother's side, so also became the 5th Earl of Gloucester. Titles breeding titles. Unlike his father, Gilbert did have some dealings with the Welsh. In 1228, after Welsh rebels led by a lad named Morgan Gam were gathering steam in the kingdom of Glamorgan, Gilbert was tasked with subduing the growing forces. This proved quite tough, actually, because Morgan Gam was getting backing from Llywelyn Ab Iorwerth, aka Llywelyn Fawr, aka Llywelyn the Great. The guy Frank's mentioned earlier.
And also, that Gam is where the English word gammy comes from his name. So, having a gammy leg? I think we mentioned it either on that episode or I'll mention it on the Owen Glyndŵr episode. But the Gam family, one of them it was kind of insulting to be like, slightly broken or not working right. And the word gammy leg comes from this guy's family's name.
What a legacy.
Yeah. Leg being the operative word there.
Very good. So, as Frank's mentioned, that Llywelyn Fawr or Llywelyn the Great, he was one of the sort of kings or princes of Wales, however you want to say it, to like effectively rule all of Wales.
He's seen as probably the most successful. There's Griffith ap Llywelyn who ruled all of it, but Llywelyn effectively ruled all of Wales, but didn't have some of the martial lands down in the south and stuff. But
there we are. So he was, Llywelyn the Great, he was keen to bring the kingdoms of Glamorgan and his own closer, basically. So that's why he was back in Morgan Gam, down in the south. Morgan was Lord of Afan from 1213 and controlled all the land between the River Afan and the River Neath. As an aside, Morgan Gam is actually related to another big dick swinger from Welsh history through his mother Gwen Llian, who was the daughter of Ifor Bach, the ruler of Senghenydd, who had his lands taken from him by the Normans. He scaled Cardiff Castle, kidnapped the Earl of Gloucester and his family, and eventually ransomed them all back.
He's one of your faves,
to get his kingdom. One of my faves. I love Ifor Bach. Yeah. I think mainly because he's like he's local to us, so he would be in our like sort of thing. He's a Cardiff boy, so there's not a lot of like big hitters, I think, in like the like Glamorgan, like where we're kind of from.
Tough.
So when you get one, I like cling on to them massively.
Well, that's the place. Glamorgan and Gwent and much of Pembrokeshire. That's the only place Llywelyn Fawr didn't control. So he controlled pretty much all of Wales, bar those places. And like you mentioned, Glamorgan, where we're from, it's been quite anglicised at this time.
Well, they became martial lands really early on, didn't they? You know, like they're the first to go whenever we get an invading force, basically. So, but it's when you get someone cool like Ifor Bach, you sort of tend to gravitate to him a bit. But so this Morgan Gam, he was the grandson of Ifor Bach. So he had a bit of a decent pedigree there. Anyway, Morgan Gam, he came face to face with Gilbert de Clare in 1228 when Gilbert was tasked with putting the troublemaking rebels down. Morgan lost the battle, sadly, and was captured by Gilbert, who imprisoned him in Clare Castle for a whole year. Morgan would again ally with Llywelyn Fawr after his release, and even went on to destroy Neath Castle in 1231 and attack Kenfig Castle years later. There's a bit more to Morgan Gam, actually, but we might cover him a bit more in depth another time. I think he might be worth doing a whole episode on. Old Gam, or the old Gammy boy himself. So this was basically the most exciting thing about this iteration of Gilbert de Clare. It was about 2 years after his scrap with Morgan that he joined an expedition to Brittany, but he died on his travels back, dying in 1230. His son, of course, circling back to Richard for a name, became the 8th Lord of Clare, and the 5th Lord of Hertford, and the 2nd Lord of Glamorgan. I can't be bothered going through all the other titles, but he did have many more. This Richard, he inherited the lands of Glamorgan from his father, and as Glamorgan was one of the most powerful martial lands, this made Richie a very powerful martial lord. As a martial lord, you'd expect a few scuffles with the Welsh, and Richard was no exception. He fortified castles in Glamorgan to fend off the odd Welsh raid, and even went on a military expedition into Cymru between 1244 and 1245, which he wound up receiving a knighthood for. He also expanded his lands. He took Maeskin, or Miskin in English, from Morgan ap Cradog ap Iestyn. He then built a castle at Llantrisant to keep an eye on his newly conquered lands, which is where he and his family actually lived. Llywelyn ap Griffith, or Llywelyn ein Llywelyn, King of Gwynedd, was in on and off war with England during this time, and apparently took a particular affront to Llantrisant Castle and what it symbolised, and sent a force to raid it, stealing supplies and valuable loot for the war effort. The interaction with the Welsh basically ends there, and in July 1258, Richard fell ill along with his brother. I couldn't find which of his brothers was poisoned with him, but I did enjoy that one of his brothers' names was Bogo de Clare. who was actually Chancellor of Llandaff, actually, which is just up the road from me. But Bogo de Clare, I thought, Richard Gilbert. What's this one? Bogo.
Bogo. You know, like in The Godfather, they have that one son who's like an idiot, you know.
And yeah, no one wants to be lumped with him. You're going to be treating with Bogo today. Oh, not Bogo. The simpleton Bogo. But anyway, Richard and potentially Bogo were poisoned. Bogo died, bless his soul, but Richard, he managed to pull through, but he did lose his hair and nails in doing so. He only go on to live another 4 years until he kicked the bucket in 1262. And it was rumoured the cause was poison again at the hands of Peter of Savoy, the Queen at the time's uncle. So yeah, he just managed to pull through poison, lost all his hair and nails. But at least I'm still kicking though, boys. Well, oh no, why does this meat taste weird again?
Doesn't this make me sound like a right scientist? That must have been something to do with creatine. Is it creatine that makes your nails and your hair? Yeah.
I think it does, yeah.
So your hair and your nails are made out of the same thing. So maybe that poison
must be something that affects your creatine production.
I could be a poisonist. I could poison the hell out of you.
Mate, you probably would have the qualifications to be like a doctor back in the day. You'd be like, I know what I'm talking about, trust me.
There's a ghost inside your skull, and I'm going to have to crack it open, okay?
Like, well, what should I do? My ears and nails fall out. Eat someone else's nails? I don't know.
You try shoving a nail up your ass? Because
bit of creatine at the bum. You think about that, King? Yeah, Mr. Clare. Yeah. Oh, listen, Gobo. My right-hand man, Bogo even. I keep getting it wrong. Gobo, Bogo, whatever it is. So yeah, anyway, sorry. He was poisoned, and some people say it was at the hands of Peter of Savoy, which was the uncle of the Queen at the time. Anywho, so on to Richard's son, Gilbert, of course, who became 9th Lord of Clare, 8th Lord of Cardigan, 3rd Lord of Glamorgan. He had a few other titles as well, but as previously stated, I can't be bothered. And this is Tales for Wales, so I'm not only asked.
You lose interest when you just start naming names anyway.
Imagine just, like in Game of Thrones, where it's like, Khaleesi, the king, queen of the Seven Kingdoms, handles.
I reckon we just say it's them, and we all get it. It's a title.
I got Clare, I got Cardigan, and Glamorgan. So I got the Welsh bit, and the name of the fucking episode is fine. Anyway. This Gilbert is the second of Clare I could find who had actually a cool nickname as well. So Strongbow was the cousin last episode. This guy was called the Red Earl, which I thought is quite cool. This Gilbert got his titles, land, inheritance, etc. in 1262. And any real clever clogs listening will have clocked what year we're coming up to shortly. A big one for Wales, but I'll go slightly off topic because Gilbert had a few other horrible strings to his bow. For some background, in 1264, the Second Barons' War kicked off. This was a civil war in England between... we always say this. It's in England, but it affected the whole island, but you know what I mean. A civil war in England between a force of powerful barons led by a chap named Simon de Montfort against royalist forces under King Henry III and then later King Edward I, or Longshanks himself. Basically, the barons wanted the king to rule alongside a council of elected barons instead of just the king getting to pick his favourites. And the king didn't want this, hence the big war. Anyway, Gilbert, the Red Earl himself, he was a good friend of the de Montforts and so joined his side in the war. While you might think, hey, these barons just want some representation in the governing body, you'd only be half right in thinking that. De Montfort and de Clare hatched a plan to take advantage of the chaos, and in April 1264, Gilbert de Clare led a massacre of the Jews at Canterbury, while de Montfort did the same at Leicester. The reason for this was threefold. The barons pitched against the king were in massive debt with Jewish moneylenders and targeted them specifically so they could erase any evidence of debts, as well as take any expensive assets they could while they were slaughtering them.
As a context, I think it was only Jews who could lend them money. It was in Christianity.
Yeah, it wasn't just in the UK that was either. It's all over Europe. Only Jewish people could lend money. The second thing was the king had pledged to protect communities like the Jewish, and so attacking them was also a symbolic gesture and defiance against King Henry III. Finally,
they were really into Palestine.
They were super into
Palestine.
They charged us saying, free Palestine, free Palestine. Do you ever sometimes think we're very flippant with the Israel-Palestine stuff on here?
Yep.
You got to have a bit of
You
levity
gotta have
in
a bit of
life,
levity.
guys. Okay?
I mean, to be fair, this is a massacre, and we still engineer a stupid joke about maybe they're big Bob Villain fans.
Right. So finally, the sort of third prong to this reason for attacking the Jews. The barons had basically been spewing out propaganda for ages saying that the Jews in England were against the barons' suggested reforms and were supplying the king and his forces with weapons and soldiers. So all of this was completely made up, but it whipped up enough bloodlust in the baronial forces against this one particular group. So the classic thing of like othering a group of
20
people.
years later, Edward I expels all Jews from Britain.
Yeah, kicked out all the Jews, didn't he?
So
I was thinking about that when I was writing this. I was like, I probably won't touch on that, but it's weird that his dad was so. Yeah. They did have a bad rap back in the day, didn't they? They got a bad roll of the dice.
The Jews were on his father's side, and then
that's what I was saying. Is like that Henry was keen on like sort of protecting the Jews and everything, and then Edward just fucking booted them out of the country. Madness. So anyway, that was the sort of three-pronged attack on the Jews and like the reasons for it. So it wasn't like as altruistic as it sounds when you think, oh, we just want representation. It was absolutely a way to just avoid having to pay your debts back. So anyway, I don't want to dwell too much on the here and now, but if you read enough about history, it is mad how often the same tactic to get people to do shit they usually wouldn't do is used. You know, it's doubly maddening how like people fall for it again and again, like that, like othering of a group. You know, just use a bit of propaganda. And imagine how easy it'd be to like be a propagandist back in those days as well. You just have to like just start saying it at the pub a couple of times, and it would just like be like go up like a fucking house fire. Anyway, so Gilbert de Clare and his mate de Montfort, they carried out their plan. They slaughtered towns full of Jews. This led to the king to take Gilbert's castles at Kingston and Tonbridge, right on his ancestral homeland. And de Clare and de Montfort were both denounced as traitors. Not long after the slaughter, de Montfort and de Clare were together again, leading a baronial army against the kings at the Battle of Lewes in Sussex. Henry and his army were tucked in nicely with 10,000 men. Wow. While the baronial army had half the numbers with about 5,000 total. So not looking great for them. De Montfort offered to negotiate with the king, but Henry declined, and so the battle began. Cool tidbits for this battle. The barons told their men to paint their crucifixes around their necks white so they could tell each other apart from the royalist men. Anyway, Longshanks, or Prince Edward, as he'd been known back at at this point in time, he was also at the battle. He was leading the cavalry, and from the offset, he led a charge against forces on the Baron's left side. The charge hit really hard, caused the affected forces to flee. This is where Edward dropped the bollock a bit, though, because he pursued the forces for about 4 miles to the village of Offham, leaving his father's army without any cavalry support. Despite the barons having the high ground up on Offham Hill, King Henry marches his infantry against them, thinking that his son had cleared off a big enough chunk of their army that the placement advantage would be cancelled out. But old Henry was wrong, unfortunately. The Baron army took advantage of the lack of cavalry support and managed to chip away at the king's forces on the summit of Offham Hill until de Montfort sent in some reserve forces to tip the scales. The royalist army were forced into a fighting retreat, attempting to get back to the Lewes castle. Prince Edward returned with his exhausted cavalry and gave another hard charge into the baronial forces, but it was just too late. He met up with his father on the battlefield, and seeing his commanders and soldiers flee, Henry persuaded Edward that there was no point fighting on. De Clare, who was a commander in the battle, he chased down the Earl of Cornwall and his men, killing them until he fled into a windmill nearby where Gilbert accepted the Earl's surrender. What was left of the army fled back to Lewes Castle, and the king was forced to sign the Mise of Lewes, ceding many of his powers to de Montfort. And as part of the agreement, Prince Edward was taken as a hostage. This gave de Montfort a huge amount of power over Henry and led to his unofficial title of the Uncrowned King of England. There's a lot more to the Second Barons' War, of course, but just to sum up quickly, Edward escaped his prison, and shortly after that, Gilbert switched to the royalist side, hampering de Montfort to gain favour with Edward and King Henry. The Royalists would eventually go on to beat what was left of the barons at the Battle of Evesham in 1265, a battle that Gilbert and his forces were a massive part of. Although the barons lost, they did manage to destroy all their debt records, so they did achieve one of their major aims. As a reward for being a dirty little turncoat, Prince Edward gave Gilbert the castle and lordship of Abergavenny, as well as the castle in Brecon, or Brecknock as the English would have called it back then. This caused even more bad blood between de Clare and Llywelyn, Prince of Gwynedd. Around this time is where Gilbert started transforming Caerphilly Castle into the massive fortress you can still see today. And then by 1272, Edward Longshanks ascended the throne of England, and de Clare was one of the first arse-kissers through the door to swear loyalty to him. In 1282, after Llywelyn ap Griffith's brother Dafydd started another Welsh rebellion following years of unfair treatment of the Welsh, de Clare insisted on leading an English army into South Wales to put down the forces of Cymru there. This would wind up being a disaster for Gilbert, though, when his forces were devastated at the Battle of Llanddeilo Fawr. We did an episode on that if you want to do a little bit more of a deep dive. But basically, the English thought they were sitting pretty, having taken Carreg Cennen Castle. And as they were transporting the spoils of war back to a safe camp, they were ambushed by a much smaller Welsh force. And despite the disparity in numbers, the Welsh killed almost all the English, took back all the loot. This massive defeat not only spurred on rebels across Wales, but actually got de Clare sacked as well and replaced by William de Valence, Earl of Pembroke. So it was a bad move for old de Clare to be coming into Wales. Despite this hopeful victory for the Welsh, as well as many others during the rebellion, as we all know, our boy Llywelyn Llw Olaf met his end at the Battle of Olrewin Bridge in December 1282, which all but ended the rebellion. It limped on until October 1283, when Dafydd ap Griffith, who actually started the whole rebellion in the first place, and had been leading it since his brother's death, he was captured, hung, drawn, and quartered. The first man ever to be given that punishment, actually. Yeah. I know a lot of people sometimes confuse that William Wallace because of the film. That happens in the film. But no, it was Dafydd ap Griffith who was the first man to ever be hung, drawn, and quartered. England formally conquered Wales then in 1284 with a statute of Rhuddlan. But most people would say that Llywelyn dying was when the dream was over for Cymru, really. Sad, sad times indeed. Worth mentioning as well that in 1285 that Gilbert married Longshanks' daughter, Joan of Acre. Very hard for me not to say Arc then, Joan of Acre. But the marriage came with a special contract thanks to greedy old Edward I. The Clare lands and titles would be given to the king, then passed to de Clare and Joan jointly. The lands then could only be passed to a direct descendant, and if the marriage was childless, it would pass to any child Joan had from her next marriage. Is that clear enough?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Anyway, turning back to the de Clares, moving on to 1291, Gilbert had a bit of a tiff with the Earl of Hereford, Humphrey de Bohun, about the lordship of Brecon. Bohun had accused de Clare of building a castle on his land, and after a long while of escalation between the two martial lords were essentially waging a private war against each other. Surprisingly enough, this wasn't against the rules as martial lords, thanks to all the extra powers they had, but the king was bloody sick and tired of it, and so brought them both before his own court. They were both imprisoned and sentenced to having their lands forfeit. De Clare, who the king saw as the aggressor, was forced to pay 10,000 marks, and the de Bohun were 1,000 marks. And to give you an idea of how much this was back in the day, 10,000 marks back then would be north of 20 million pounds today. So big time. Although I will say that de Clares was one of the richer Marcher families in the country. So they could probably afford it, but still, bit of a hit. They were both released from prison pretty much straight away and given all their lands back, which most historians thought was just a way of the king to give them a very public slap on the wrist and remind them not to take the piss with their extra privileges. The last interesting fray with the Welsh Gilbert had happened a year before his death in 1294, when a new rebellion started up, led by Mad Dog ap Llywelyn.
Mad Dog.
Oh, Mad Dog. Yeah. Mad Dog, maddest dog in Wales. We did an episode on him as well. That's a very good unsung rebellion episode. That actually had Longshanks on the ropes for a very brief moment.
He got cornered, didn't he? And he had to get...
He did get cornered, yeah. It was one of those moments in history where if it had gone just a little bit differently, could have changed the whole landscape. But anyway, Gilbert's castles in Llantrisant were attacked and damaged at the offset of this revolt. But this de Clare, he wouldn't live to worry about it too long. He died in December 1295, so just short of a year after that. And that is basically the whole beef between the de Clare family and Wales. But as a bonus de Clare, I'll very quickly include Gilbert's son, 7th Earl of Hertford. This Gilbert was only a baban when his dad died, so his mother, Joan, remained Countess of the Clare lands until she died in 1307, where the lands and titles fell to Gilbert at the age of 16. Same year Edward I died, and Edward II took the crown. There's a fairly chunky bit about the 10th Earl of Clare and the last of the direct family line to hold the title, but it's already been a longie, so I'll just give you the cliff notes. Basically, this Gilbert fought a lot in Scotland for Edward II and was given quite big roles in the campaign because of his name, and even served as Warden of Scotland from 1308 to 1309. He was involved in a lot of the goings-on with Edward II and Piers Gaveston and all the politicking that went on between the king and the lords at the time. But to get to the end quickly, in 1314, Gilbert was in Scotland the day of a big battle, the Battle of Bannockburn.
Oh.
The king was considering whether to engage the Scots straight away or camp for the night when Gilbert and Henry de Bohun charged the Scottish camp with a group of men.
I know this one. That's him.
I think you touched on this before, yeah. So no one's sure whether this was an insubordination or just a misunderstanding, but in any case, they instantly ran into trouble. De Bohun was killed by none other than Robert the Bruce himself.
Yeah, with an axe, wasn't it?
And yeah, that's right. And Gilbert only narrowly escaped with his life.
Have you seen the artist drawings of it? Sorry, it's like I never use. No, I never ever use Facebook, but every time I have to have it for work. But because I've interacted with like historical things, there's this artist who keeps coming up on there who does like medieval, like famous battles, and the one that comes up so often is Robert the Bruce, where he charges on a much smaller horse,
braining Bohun. Yeah.
He like comes up on a much smaller horse, and he's got like a hand axe in his hand, whereas like the other one's dressed as a proper knight, and he just fucking wedges it in his skull.
Oh, that guy, that sounds right up my street. That sort of artwork as well. Really, so I'll check that out. So yeah, the next day when the English were debating a plan of action, Gilbert suggested caution as he'd already seen the Scots up close and was obviously a bit the willies had been put up in. The other lords labelled him, quote, lethargic and cowardly.
He needs a B12 injections.
He does need the B12 injections. And so Gilbert declared he would prove how brave he was on the field of battle.
Gilbert declared? Was that on purpose?
Gilbert declared he would prove how brave he was on the field of battle. There's a kind of hero's poem called the Vita Edwardi Secundi that portrays Gilbert as the fearless hero thwarted by the sneaky tactics of the Scots. But this, of course, is massively biased.
Yeah. Up the Alba. Come on, you Scots.
Up the Alba. Other records suggest Gilbert went into battle a bit hot and heavy and paid the price for it. According to the account of Presswich, Gilbert rushed in too eager, forgetting to show his coat of arms to the Scottish soldiers, and was cut down in battle. So if he'd have remembered to show his coat of arms, the Scots would have most likely tried to take him alive because they'd got a hefty ransom for him. But because he didn't, he was sliced and diced. He died there on the fields of Bannockburn in 1314 at only 23 years old.
Whoa.
After Gloucester was killed, the English army soon fell into disarray, and the battle resulted in a resounding victory for the Scots and a humiliating withdrawal for the English. It was widely agreed that old Gil, with his proud family history and valuable estates, was the most prominent of the many casualties that day. Gilbert had no sons, and so the de Clare estates were broken up between different relatives and cousins, split over many different families, and that was the end of the second most wealthy house in the entire realm.
I was thinking, is there like some Gilbert just sat in a pub in Barry at the moment?
You know what, I really wanted to like find like who is the last line of the Gilbert sort of thing. But no, this is where they got.
We'll bleep the name, but I went to school with.
I remember, Mercedes de Clare. Do you think she's a descendant of the de Clares?
100%, man. 100%, because it's from Barry, and, you know...
They did own Glamorgan.
Yeah, I definitely think there would be a lineage there. I think otherwise, where else would that name come from? Why would there be a de Clare?
Yeah. I mean, we can cut this if you want, but...
Maybe we clue.
We probably cut that. It's a bit harsh. Maybe we'll beep it out and just leave this little bit at the end.
Maybe. There was a couple of declares kicking about anyway.
So I'm gutted that the Welsh didn't put an end to the declares, but I'm pretty happy with the Scots doing it for us. Our little Celtic.
And we've said it before. Edward I tested his metal out against the Welsh quite a lot, and he also was in the he was in the Crusades and all that. But had he gone to Scotland first and then his son come to Wales, because it was the other way around. He did Wales first, then Scotland, and then his son, it was shit, and then his son lost and ended up being killed in Caerphilly Castle. But had Edward first attacked Scotland and spent years doing that until he died, and then come to Wales, it could have been a different story. Although
it would have been a different story.
Apparently, Llywelyn in Llywelyn wasn't liked by a lot of the Welsh, and the first rebellion that got put down, Llywelyn was it was like 9,000 of the 15,000 strong army were Welsh. They weren't a fan of him. But then the second one, the one in 1282, was it wasn't like a lordship one. It was a people's revolt. It was because there's so many punitive things.
The people had enough, as opposed to like your sort of banner lord commanding you to do something. Yeah, so there's it was actual. There's a bit of heart into it.
It's mad. It's mad to actually finally understand who they were after seeing them so often.
Yeah, I think reading through it was super interesting because
400 years of Declare.
Yeah, I think I actually
maybe a bit less than that. Maybe
how
a bit
long
less
it was.
than that.
It was, but it's a lot. Yeah. It's a lot, and it's
200
and so often when you look into Welsh history, you hear of Declare attacking something, and it's always. I think it's what's really fucking confusing.
They're all called the same
always
thing.
Richard or Gilbert. So you got it
from like 1066 until like 1282. You're like, what?
It's literally pretty much since the Normans came over. It's like until 12. When did I say that?
1290 something.
1290 something. But 13, 14.
Yeah, that's been. Yeah.
But so it died with this poor boy.
My hate will die with you.
With you. That's the end of the Clares.
Wow. So and let's never mention them ever again. This will never happen in my kingdom again.
Again. Clare Kingdom again.
Right, I'm going to get a beer. Should we stop? Oh, and for a teaser, next week's episode is about the Lanska line, which is all about the Normans and the Declares and them who set up there is a little
through thread,
the little England beyond Wales. And we'll cover that in the next episode. So, Dirk and Grandor, thanks so much. We love you. Shove it up your ass.